So, the returns problem. I was asked to talk about the industry and ecological crisis and the nightmare beyond all nightmares. And again, you've got my information up here. It's really easy to find me in LinkedIn and anywhere. Well, LinkedIn Sciarrotta is a little bit of a challenge. So, Tony at RLA, that's if you need to reach me. It's my job to help try to communicate the message about returns and what's being done. One tip for all of you who sell products that have a serial number on it, you heard Joyce go through extensive detail about how that can be used. And frankly, she didn't say enough about how I got to become some kind of a hero at Philips because I also took return rates down from double digits to single low digits because we used this process to track serial numbers at retail. So the retailer could confirm that what they sold is what they got back, and not something that they didn't sell or something that was fraudulent or stolen. So that's an important tip for you. If you want more about that, you can ask Joyce or I about the serial number tracking. In the meantime, let's talk about how many of you here in the room are involved in returns in any way? Returns processing, returns shipping. Okay, here's the good news. You have a lot of work coming ahead of you. We are $1 trillion plus industry in North America alone if you count B2B and B2C. And somewhere in this big circle, circular economy, are so many activities that no one company does. You have to find partners. It begins at the point of the return desk. Dispositioning should immediately happen. And the retailers need help with this. So do the e-commerce people. You disposition by a UPC code. And if you have a really good software system, the UPC code dispositioning is driven by data from the internet that says, what's the value of this product out there in the secondary market? That's not easy to do. You got to data mine millions of points of information and tell the machine, is it worth touching this or not? So disposition should begin immediately at the retailer, and in some cases it does. And then the question is, well, there's two questions. First off, most companies don't have anyone in charge of returns. Joyce is an exception to the rule. And then when I say in charge of returns, somebody who knows what they're doing. And then the second is, what do you want your customer to do with a return? What do you want them to do? And that's where it falls into it. Do you want them to bring it back to you? Do you want them to ship it back? Do you want them to give it to charity? That's becoming a new trend, a not sustainable one of saying, just keep the product, we'll give you your money. And I had that experience with my wife and I with a little dog who had little stairs that he jumped up on the bed with, and it broke, and they said, okay, we'll just give you your credit. It's like, that doesn't make sense to me, and it is not sustainable, but it's a different part of the discussion. You'll notice that repair refurbish is number one. And in many cases, as Joyce and I both know, 80, 90, 95% of products that come back have no fault found. No technical fault, nothing else. It was a bad experience. So repair and refurbish is possible for easily 95% of the products. Does anyone think that 95% of the returns are being touched, repaired, and refurbished? You all know better. This is what's going into landfills. We'll talk about it. Repackaging, there's an easy one. Put it back on the shelf, sell it as a secondary product. I'm proud of companies like Nike, Patagonia, and many others who have figured out how to take clothing, shoes, and apparel and figure out how to take it back and sell it on a secondary market. And they're getting very smart about it. Nike says, send us back your old Air Jordans. We'll give you a $50 credit for new ones. And they'll take the old ones and they'll sell them for $100 because they'll clean them up and they'll sanitize them. So there's really amazing things going on about repackaging. Of course, reselling, I mentioned, reusing, as Joyce went through extensively. Last on the list, last we want to do is to recycle. Okay, I get to show you more dirty pictures like Joyce did. This is I'm sorry, I should have asked first. Has anyone ever been in a warehouse that's a returns facility? Few people have. Those are probably nice looking pictures. The one on the left, of course, is where the retailers' returns are sitting and going. And it's a mess. And when I look at that picture, I think what that means, knowing that 95% of that stuff works, I think about all the people who are pissed off one way or another because they had to take something back to the store. They did not like that, or they had to drop it off at UPS for a free return. Now, we've made it really easy to do returns, and that's what happens. And on the right side, you can see what happens when you get it semi-organized. Or that might be a bin store. That's a new business model that's coming out. People buying truckloads of returns, put them in a storefront, let people have a feeding frenzy. If you've not seen it on YouTube, please look at it. It's crazy what's going on out there. But you can clearly see that it's a mix of products, and they're not being treated very well. And so there's got to be new solutions for what do we do to do something with that stuff valuable. All right, the next is where's this stuff going? What's happening out there? The next biggest growing nightmare is apparel. If you don't know, if you've never seen this picture before on 60 Minutes or anywhere else, the picture on the left, this is a desert in Chile, South America, where clothes are being dumped left and right. And it's really sad because on the right side, you can see the tag. I'm not picking on TJ Maxx. It could be a JC Penney tag. It could be any tag. But here's the point. Fast fashion and apparel is the second largest item going into landfills in our country after food waste. Second largest item going into landfills. Think about that for a moment. So we're saying it's better to throw it away or ship it to Chile than to donate it or to put it into homeless shelters or many, many other charities that are out there. I'm very proud that our association actually has charity organizations in our membership. Good 360, Goodwill, Win Warehouse. Multiple members are charities because they understand they need to find these people who are doing this and say, don't ship it on the water halfway across the world. And by the way, the other picture could be Ghana, any of the countries in Africa where we dump stuff. Okay? This is a message to everyone here. Let's find a better way. Offer these solutions to people. Here's the other nightmare. Metric tons, 75 million metric tons of electronic waste, e-waste, e-scrap, whatever you want to call it. We're exporting this product also. So the United States has become quite an exporter in this area, not in the area of valuable goods, but junk. And it's unfortunate because this product can also be recycled. Much of it, think about, again, that pile of stuff. Most of it was working once. And it can be reused. It can be recycled ultimately, but we are exporting it around the world. And if you haven't seen the other picture, of course, we used to send it all to China. That was one of our largest exports back to China was scrap, e-waste, plastics, just everything went back to China. China shut the door. So now the companies around China open their doors. So that's Thailand. The e-waste industry is booming there because for them, these products have some value. And again, why would you ship it halfway across the world for people who can find value in it and you can't do it more local? And so the focus for us is about conveying this message and how do we do something about it? Well, I'll give you the example. In the apparel industry, we've got some great ideas that are going on. There's upcycling. Young people, the new generation, they love the term pre-loved. They go to consignment shops. They go to Goodwill to shop. And it's interesting to me that that's coming back because when I was young, we went to the thrift store, the Goodwill store, any of those markets to buy cheap clothes because you were in college or you were just out of college. And it's nice to see that that's coming back. There's even the luxury pre-owned sites. I mean, what do you do with a $10,000 Yves Saint Laurent bag or Donna Kors or Michael Kors? Any of those products that go back and they sit in a closet. And now there's an opportunity with websites like The Real Real and Poshmark where if you have one of those expensive garments or a Tumi bag or anything in particular that's high ticket, you've got a place to go for it. to sell it. You don't have to just do it on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace anymore. There's some really keyed sites. Really proud of a member of our association when I talk about apparel, because that's the biggest nightmare. ThreadUp. If you don't know about ThreadUp, they are an organization. They'll send you a bag, fold it up. You throw your clothes in there. You send it to them. Brand names are smarter to send. Don't send garbage. And then they post it on their website. And ThreadUp moved 16 million garments last year for you as consumers. So there's solutions out there that are getting incredibly creative, and it's important that we focus on that. And then, of course, again, I'm coming back to that serial number RFID tracking so that you can stop fraudulent returns. Not only are the return rates going up, at least in this country and everywhere, we estimate return rates somewhere around 16 to 20% for B2C. That's retail value. But we're starting to see a difference with the products that are not serialized having no solutions, and fraud has gone up. I've done this for a while. I think I mentioned that. I was at Phillips, and I was a really happy-go-lucky sales guy who just shipped, sold a lot of goods, and then suddenly they said, go fix the returns problem. All right? Any of you gets dragged out of this room and said, go fix the returns problem, it's a little bit of a nightmare, especially around turn of the century. Fraud and returns back then, the numbers were more like returns, NRF estimates, about 200 billion. Now we're at 840 billion. Fraud used to be a 1 to 2% problem. It's now north of 10%. So that means people are taking things back that they either never purchased or it's a cheap ripoff, and it's happening. What's important about an event like this is you have to provide these solutions to the retailers and manufacturers. They don't find it on their own unless they've got experts like Joyce. And that takes a long time. We spent many years talking together about solutions and implementing them in your company. And we talked about that yesterday, and Joyce mentioned it too. I'm willing to bet, and I've spent a lot of years in sales at Sony and Philips, that the returns people are the most crossover people in that company, because we will sit in meetings when products are ready for launch and we raise the hand. We get to be the dark side then and say, you know what, if you ship that product, you're going to get a lot of returns. And sometimes you get overridden, and then you see the numbers, and then you're like, see, I told you so. And you hate to do that, but sometimes you have to. So we cross over a lot of silos. We cross over into the service area, because the more service you can do, the less returns you get. And then we cross over into marketing and packaging, because the number one reason for returns, we've already said it's not that the product is defective. The number one reason for returns, and I can state this as a fact, I'll tell you why, 76% of the people who return goods, they know it's not defective. That was the number I got as a survey in the early 2000s. I'm sure the number is higher, because people buy multiple garments now, and they try their outfits on in their own bedroom, in their own home, and then they send anything back they don't want. So that's called bracketing. That's one nightmare. But this continues to grow, and there's creative solutions out there, and more are needed. So everyone in this room, this is where you can live, because this will continue to grow. It doesn't matter how much we do to slow it down. And Joyce and I worked very hard at Philips. Double-digit returns in a $2 billion company, you can do the math. It was a lot of money coming back. And we reduced it down to about 3 to 4%. Used to make the joke that my job was to work myself out of a job, which I kind of did. Fortunately, Philips said, we can keep you around for other things, consulting and other things, and then they joined the RLA as a member. So Philips is very good. It was a very good learning ground, but they needed solutions. And that's what we have here, companies who can provide solutions. In the electronics space, you've heard it from Joyce. I don't need to repeat it too much. Repair and reuse is big. You're going to see more about certified pre-owned. It's in the auto industry. It's time to bring it into the electronics industry and even the apparel industry to some degree. But in electronics in particular, certified pre-owned means that your company did something to make sure there's no private data left on it. And if you're Bank of America, you're still reeling from a $150 million breach lawsuit that you had to settle on because you weren't careful. So certified pre-owned is critical. Life cycle management, you've heard enough about. Producer responsibility. This is becoming a big thing. The big thing is that there's laws now around the world, and if you got to hear the keynote yesterday by Avitas from WRAP, Avitas Safarian and I go way back, we know that the producer responsibility laws are coming, and they're coming from Europe. Germany has a very strict one yesterday. He spoke about it a little bit yesterday. But ultimately, the manufacturers, the producers, are going to be held accountable for whatever is being done with or to their products. And it's a little extreme, but that's the way it works in our planet usually. We go from one extreme to another. So producer responsibility is coming. The European Union is considering a full implementation of it, as opposed to Germany has already started it themselves. France got clever. I love this one, repairability index. If you've not heard of it, when you go buy a product on the shelf, particularly electronics, there's a repairability index that says this product by company ABC has a repairability index of 90%. This product by company XYZ repairability index is only 50%. Which one are you going to buy? It's a great move, and that's in France. The mandates to buy refurb, that's also in France, and I'm proud of this one. And I think our own government here is moving in that direction, where they're mandating that a certain percentage of their IT purchases are refurbished equipment. And this is great news because Acer does it, HP does it, Dell, Cisco, they all refurbish their goods and they can provide it to the government. Last again, serial number tracking for CE-FAX. You're going to see it. Again, I'm here for the dark side, but there is light, and Joyce did a better job of talking about the circular economy. I can't really change the name anymore. We are the Reverse Logistics Association, but if I could, we'd be the Circular Economy Federation in a minute. So with that said, we're going to introduce our next speaker in just a moment, but I think Anthony is there with the microphone in the room. If anyone has a question, these numbers are important. They're big. You can work with your clients on this. You can work to get new prospects on this, because this is information that they may not even know. End-to-end cost of returns is such a hidden number. It's really a challenge. But any questions? Anybody in the room? Oh, we have one up here. Sure.
Richard from Schneider Electric, and I have a program where we'll be looking at this pretty much holistically, like we saw in the first presentation. And one of the challenges I'd like to hear is and one of the gaps I see is organization. And what do you see as the best practice? I'm in logistics, and so we have the back end, but hearing what is the best practice to set up the organization, to have the right level of sponsorship, collaboration with really the end-to-end. So I'd like to hear the best practices and how you would recommend setting up an organization for the run state beyond sort of the initial program we're running.
Well, how many hours do you have? I do workshops on best practices that I spent 4 hours talking to companies like yours about how to do it. It does start, as Joyce mentioned, it should start at the C-suite. Any third-party service provider out there should have a C-suite director of returns, because that is a gigantic opportunity. That's number one. Number two, do more than just move this stuff. Do more than just move it, because it's the number one cost in returns are the number of touch points. So if you can help a company reduce touch points by offering them, you'll pick it up, you'll bring it to a facility, you'll do some of the work there for them, maybe you can resell it for them, and then ship off to recycle anything that's not salvageable. Those are some best practices. and sharing, as Joyce also mentioned, and it's just critical. We're talking more about ESG these days and about carbon footprints. DHL, one of our members, offers a carbon footprint calculator on their website. And it's not rocket science. Anyone can use it, and you should. And you can go to a company and say, look, if you're trying to make a difference in your ESG scores, we can help. We're your logistics provider, and we can do more for you. So those are best practices, I would say. But in particular, ESG and carbon footprints are the new buzz. We acknowledge that it's going to take a long time to get to zero carbon footprints, and that's a challenge. But in the meantime, you can help companies make a difference. And that's at the end of the day, that's what we focus on telling you. Find a way to make a difference. There's so many of them. And you know what? It's fun to be a hero at your company if you reduce returns by $180 million.